We don't even have a single hair, and I think this is a good time to pause the video and ask yourself, how would you approach this?
What's up, my nerds? Good to see you back. Today we are diving into more post-production, just like the last time. If you haven't seen it, definitely recommend watching it first. Either way, we'll explore techniques that are more experimental, slightly obscure, and surprisingly powerful in this new AI era. Let's jump right into it. We'll focus on this image first. It's pretty straightforward, but it's worth showing the process just to get warmed up. This is the final image, and this will be our starting point today. You can immediately notice that there's an area missing at the bottom. Originally, we had the camera tilted a bit upwards, but once we placed the shot into the edit, it just felt better to extend the frame downward. And since we are trying to do as little 3D rendering as possible, we will handle that in post in just a minute. So first we improved the sun a bit. We changed the color of the sun because the one straight from Corona was completely white. It's a small change, but it can totally reshape how we perceive the image. It's definitely a trick worth knowing. Next, we move on to the missing bottom part, and honestly, without overthinking it, we are just doing some generative extent. Sure, we could re-render it, but this is way faster. We just need some vague general content down there. It's not perfect from the get-go, but we can improve it with Firefly. Then we started to add a sun reflection on the water. For this, we used the same technique as with the clouds in the previous video. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. We began with a rough placeholder for the sun reflection, and from there we used Firefly to gradually turn it into a proper reflection. You'll notice there's more than few layers here. I'll click through them one by one so you can see the progression. It wasn't perfect at first, but layer by layer it came together. Sometimes we used lasso to define an area for generation, but other times we switched for the selection brush. The selection brush, by the way, is an extremely fun and powerful tool, and in this example, we are just showing you the result. But if you're not familiar with it, don't worry, we will cover how to use it in the next example, just a couple of minutes from now. In the end, we got a sun reflection that naturally fades into the water, without any additional 3D rendering. Sweet! Moving on, we applied some color grading. This time we used the Breaking Bad LUT, one of those teal and orange LUTs, and a little bit of hue and saturation on the sun's reflection to make it even more intense. Nothing crazy. And finally, the cherry on top, upscaling passes. Here we run a few magnific passes with different settings. You'll see the settings of each pass on the screen. Eventually we take the best from each. One of them made the trees look a bit too mushy, but the sun reflection was really good. We get that fidelity and the last 5% of quality for free. Then you can see another LUT to turn those areas a bit greener, and finally a small fix to adjust two branches that were bothering us. Beautiful, here's how the final image turned out. This was just a quick, simple example to give you an idea of how the process looks like. More often than not, it's really that simple. Next up, we will go over this shot, which is pretty cool, It's simple, but only if you know the right tricks. So yeah, interestingly enough, we started from this position. And of course, the main problem is that the character looks completely different. We don't even have a single hair, it's just a blob, And I think this is a good time to pause the video and ask yourself, how would you approach this? Would you go for matte painting, Firefly, maybe go to Magnifique? Well, to be honest, all of those are valid options, but in our case, we went for the selection brush and some additional paint overs. Not gonna lie, that's an extremely cool and versatile technique. We started by loosely sketching the hair. I already had a few brush strokes down and added a few more as well. You can see that they are very rough strokes with colors sampled from nearby areas. Next up, we choose selection brush and set the opacity to 36%, so we hope that it will be consistent in 36% and creative in 64, give or take. And to my surprise, we actually got nice generation on the first go. That's kind of cool. And from there, it's a matter of generating more fragments piece by piece. But unfortunately, yeah, not the stuff we actually want to include. But hey, that's AI, it happens. We can turn into selection brush again, and as you'll see, we were able to build this hair very quickly. We can go to upscalers, or maybe we can use retexture to get even more fidelity, but yeah, we get it practically for free, with a little bit of out-of-the-box thinking and AI or matte painting trickery. Definitely recommend trying this one out, even though it has some limitations like with anything AI, but we battle tested this approach extensively in our 3D+AI Masterclass. We've used it to make monkeys, we've used it to make a dress, So yeah, if you want to dive deeper, see the full process and learn practical ways to make Firefly actually work for you, definitely check it out, all the links below. Moving on, we add a little bit of a glow behind the throne, just enough to make the silhouette pop a bit more. That's a small but pretty important tweak. We don't want to have objects becoming one blur. We darken and desaturate the hair a little bit. Next up, standard 2x magnifique upscale for the whole image. We use it almost everywhere, apart from the flowers. And here's another good moment to pause and ask yourself, how would you make those flowers more rich and lush? Like would you add more of them in 3D and re-render the whole thing? Would you use Firefly? Well, this time we will let Magnifique handle it. Let me walk you through it with this diagram. First, we start with a crop of our rendering. That's how it looks. Then we downscale it by 50%. We use the same export as trick in Photoshop that we showed you in the previous video. And finally, we use Magnifique to upscale it. As you can see, we suddenly get lots of extra flowers for free. We give Magnifique a tiny image. We upscale it by 4 times and we guide it with a prompt. And what we are essentially doing here is letting Magnifique hallucinate those flowers into existence, Pretty cool, isn't it? Normally, hallucinations are something we try to avoid, but here, this is the whole point. So yeah, if you don't need every single leaf to be perfect, this is a fantastic way to get that organic variation. It feels like magic, honestly. Eventually, we desaturate them a bit to match the rest of the image, and that's it for the plant. Next up, we use another pass of Magnifique to add some extra detail to the throne. You can see the relief becoming much more defined. And to emphasize that even more, we darken the lower part of the throne and brighten up the top. We also brighten the hair a little bit. And yeah, here some final touches here and there, a vignette. We darken the columns. At the end, we also stretch the image a bit because we had some artifacts on the edge. And yeah, that's a done deal. Beautiful. 2 down, 2 more to go. Next up, we have this shot. And it's a great example of a technique that we haven't shown you yet, because we started with this. So as you can see, there's a stark difference. And again, if you don't know the trick, it might feel impossible to do. So here's one last question. How would you do it? Firefly? Magnifique? What are your AI instincts telling you now? And yeah, for this one, we are actually jumping into Midjourney. That was a tricky one. We head over to the Edit tab and upload a crop of our 3D rendering. Then we choose a reference image. I know you can barely see it here, but it's one of our earlier Midjourney generations from the research phase. We set it as a style reference, added a prompt, and run a couple of retextures. Fast forward and voila! We've transplanted the details from reference onto our 3D rendering. Midjourney does a great job of combining them together and get multiple options to pick from. From there, we can take the best generations and layer it back onto the original. This is such a powerful technique to know, especially if you're exploring image to 3D workflows, because your 3D models doesn't need to carry all the details. AI gives it back in post. Pretty sneaky and pretty cool. Back to Photoshop, we place the retextures on top and we cleaned things out a bit. We also adjusted the colors. We actually had a whole series of retextured layers for the main priest. We took the hand from one generation, the crown from another, and some body details from the third. So yeah, it's all about mixing and matching the best parts. We also used Firefly to fix some missing parts, especially around the water. And again, just like we did many times before, we added the garnish of our rendering, a few Magnifique passes, mainly on the characters. Here's the first one, and the second one. Yeah, you know the drill already. Some small fixes and a bit of color adjustment and the image is done. Alright, time to slowly bring this lesson home. I know this one's a little bit longer, but I hope you're still with us. Time for the big finale. Let's cover this image. It's such a weird one. This was our starting position, and yeah, it's gonna get crazier and crazier. And just before we go into Photoshop and go through all the layers, I want to show you something that we'll use over and over again to make this post-production work. We'll actually go for the retexture trick from the previous example. But the twist here is that our reference will be different. We'll use some of the creatures from our research phase. You can see the input, the style reference, and the output. And as we'll go deeper into post-production, we'll use the same trick again, but with a different monster. And do it again. And again. And again. You know, so we did several times throughout the post-production just to get different parts that we can Frankenstein together. And having that in mind, let's see everything from start to finish. I will let the time-lapse play and give you a brief commentary as we go. So we started with a round of Midjourney retextures. We generated a bunch and took what we liked from each one. For example, we took this part right here because we like this organic character. There's also a strange insect-like form in the center and even some weird connection at the top. We just kept figuring things out as we go. And yeah, another round of retextures. We really like this form with the legs hanging down, maybe some hair or strands, something organic. And at some point, quite unexpectedly, we got this abdomen-like shape, which looked like a face. Totally unplanned, but super exciting. We went with it. We also brightened up the whole area quite a bit, just to make the details easier to read while we were working on it. Next up, we flooded the image with red. We used different blending modes and brightened it up. We also tried to add some elements in the middle, like some hanging strands again. At some point, we put a placeholder for the humanoid part, somewhere in the middle. We haven't figured it out by that time, but that's fine. Next up was a classic 2x upscale in Magnifique to add that fidelity. Then some firefly fixes to blend the creature with the roof, some minor color adjustments, and finally, we bring the creature face from another rendering. We decided to go with the humanoid one, and yeah, we color graded and that part was finished. Then it was the time to combine this with the establishment shot, so again, step by step. We added a red paint over. Then we used Topaz impression filter to create a painterly look. We brought the monster and kept working on the final image. You can see it's super duper experimental, but also extremely fun. And at this point, we sketched out some roots and some tendrils, trying to bind the monster to the structure. We brought the throne from another rendering, and there's a round of back and forth using Firefly and Magnifique again. We painted some vapors, some smoke, and yeah, it started to look way more cohesive. We also added some extra limbs to the monster, fading this whole thing into the mist and giving it more like a spider or strange creature look. I think this is more or less with everything clicked. We are close to the end at this point, think tight. There are many layers of micro adjustments and several Magnifique upscalers. We also experimented with something happening at the top. Ultimately, we abandoned the idea and just created the umbilical cord again. We added some extra limbs to disrupt the perfect space and the chapel that left us. This was a big move, and suddenly, yeah, this one was the true moment when it clicked. We even tried to create some even more spider-like limbs with Firefly and see how it works with the whole composition. Blended it a bit with the mist, Magnifique one more time, and that was the final image. So yeah, that's about it. I won't hold you any longer. See you in the next one when we dive into storyboard and editing. How exciting! See you there!